Hey guys, this is Ankita from English Test Solution. Today we're going to cover question number 2 of the TOEFL speaking section. So I'm going to first show you the general structure of this question number 2. Then we're going to go through an example together. Then I'm going to provide you a template that you can use to answer this question. Then I'm going to give you a time breakdown so that you know exactly how much time you need to spend on each part of this question. Then I have actually responded to this question before the presentation, so you will hear my response and we'll analyze my response to see that how I use my own template to answer this question. I'm going to give you additional tips and then we'll have a discussion on what will get you a 26 plus on the TOEFL speaking section. So as you guys know, starting August 2019, the TOEFL speaking has only 4 tasks, 1 independent and 3 integrated tasks. It is total of 17 minutes long and it starts right after a 10-minute break. You have 1 independent task which requires you to express your opinion on a topic. So you will get a question without any reading or listening and you have to respond it based on your experience. Then there are 3 integrated tasks from question number 2 to question number 4, and they require you to combine information from different sources, such as you will hear a reading or a listening, and then you're going to be asked a question. So when you're responding to that question, you have to combine the information from these various sources. So question number 2. In this question, you see a reading passage which really has a campus-related announcement. So imagine like a brown board in a university where, they stick a big announcement or major change that's coming up. So you're going to read a passage and you will see that they're talking about some major change and university is like announcing that change. Then you're going to listen to a conversation between 2 students who will be discussing that change or the announcement. But in this case, out of the 2 students, only 1 student will have an opinion on the change. So they will either agree with the change or disagree with it. Then you're going to be asked a question about that what is the man's or the women's opinion and why do they have that opinion? So explain the reasons that they give for having that opinion. Now you will have 30 seconds to prepare for your response and 60 seconds to respond. So the question looks something like this. So I have actually picked an example, and this is basically a campus-related announcement, and you have 45 seconds to read this. So we can actually read this together because I feel like you can watch as many YouTube videos as you want, but if you don't practice the questions, you will not be able to really progress. And as I said before, I have responded to this question before the presentation, so you can do this question side by side and then compare your response to my response to see where the gaps are. Okay, so let's start reading it. Evening computer classes may be added. The computer department is considering offering evening classes in the fall. The proposal to add the classes is a response to student complaints that daytime computer classes have been increasingly overcrowded and there are no longer enough computers available. So let's stop here. So the first statement itself, where it said that the computer department is considering offering evening classes in the fall, that's basically the change that's happening, that the evening classes, computer classes will be offered in the evening. And it matches with the subject heading here, evening computer classes may be added. Now, the next line, the proposal to add the classes is a response to student complaints that daytime computer classes have become increasingly overcrowded and there are no longer enough computers available. So in this question, they tell you a change or an announcement, and then they give you 2 reasons that why they're making that change. So we can see already that they have given us that information already. The first reason is that the daytime computer classes have become overcrowded. And the second reason of their change is that there are no longer enough computers available. So you will note that down in your notes. And then it says, the department has decided that despite some added expense, the most cost-effective way of addressing this problem is by adding computer classes in the evening. So this is good information, that they understand that this is going to add some additional expense, but they think that this is the most cost-effective method of solving this issue. And you might notice that when I am reading and comprehending the reading passage, I'm already kind of changing it into my own language. I'm not using exactly the same words that they use. This is a great way of already starting preparing for your response, because when you are giving your response, you don't want to use the exact language. So you can see when I'm thinking and paraphrasing, I'm already doing it in my own language, in different words. So it is hoped that this change will decrease the number of students enrolled in day classes and thus guarantee individual access to computers for all students in computer classes. So here they're kind of in the last sentence saying that this is how we're going to solve the two problems that we stated before. You know, the two problems that they stated here, overcrowded and not enough computers for everyone. They are saying that this is how we're going to solve it. Okay? So this is how you read it. So make sure in your notes you have the change written, what the change is about. That's actually the key that you need to write. Other things are very important to understand, but if you are, obviously you only have 45 seconds, so if you are short of time, first thing you need to write is what is the change about, then followed by understanding what the passage is about, and the third thing is to then, if you have time, the third thing is to write down the two reasons. So just quickly write overcrowded, and second, not enough computers for everyone. Okay, so now that we have read the announcement, we're now going to listen to the conversation between the two students. Okay, so I'm going to play it for you.
Now listen to two students discussing the article.
I just don't think this will work.
Why not?
Because it's not going to solve the problem. Students are busy at night. I mean, we have jobs, families, clubs, social events. Most of us already have something to do every single night of the week.
I see your point. I sure couldn't fit anything into my schedule during the week. I've got swimming practice most nights.
Right. And as far as expense goes, I think they're going about it the wrong way. I mean, it costs money to hire more teachers and keep the academic building open later, which is a lot more expensive than just simply buying more computers.
More computers?
That's right. Computer prices have come way down the past few years, so the department won't have to spend as much now as they did in the past. Besides, the computer department classrooms, you know, the rooms themselves, they're actually very big. There's plenty of space to add more computers.
The man expresses his opinion about the proposal described in the article. Briefly summarize the proposal. Then state his opinion about the proposal and explain the reasons he gives for holding that opinion.
Okay, so now that you have heard the conversation, you know that the man doesn't agree with this change or this announcement, and he had two reasons, okay? He told us that he doesn't think that this is going to work because students are busy in the evening, and he kind of elaborates on that viewpoint. And then he explains to us the second reason he has, which is that he thinks that this is not a good way of solving this issue because it's actually going to increase university's expense, and by obviously having more teachers and building needs to be open at night. And then he actually gives us kind of his viewpoint on how university can actually solve this issue. So you basically take down good notes, and today we're not covering like the note taking in detail, but so I'm going to hold on to that here, but we're going to focus on the question itself and how you should answer this question. So now I'm going to give you a template that you can use to answer this question, or really any question number two. Question number twos have not changed much or at all in the last 10 years. So this is the answer template that you can follow. You can start by saying that the university has decided to, or you can say the announcement is about. Then you're going to state students' opinion, right? Because look at the question. The question has three parts here. First part is briefly summarize the proposal. Then second part is state his opinion about the proposal. Third part is explain the reasons he gives for holding that opinion. There are three parts to this question. So we're going to start by saying the university has decided to, or the announcement is about. So what we're doing, we're answering the first part of the question, which was briefly summarize the proposal. Then I'm going to state students' opinion. So I'm answering the second part of the question here. I can say, the students are discussing this change and the man disagrees with the proposed change. Or you can say directly, the man disagrees with the announcement. And you don't have to say the students are discussing this change. Whatever comes naturally to you. Then, you have to explain the third part of the question, which is explain the reasons he gives for holding that opinion. So you're going to make the transition into that by saying, the man gives 2 reasons for having this opinion. Or you can say the man provides 2 reasons. Whatever comes naturally to you. Again, these templates are great, but I recommend that if you are targeting a 26 plus, you do not memorize a template. Rather, you use this template as an inspiration and give natural sounding responses. And you'll hear my response later and you'll see that I use my template, but it doesn't sound like I have memorized anything. Okay, so then you're going to give the first reason and then you're going to give the second reason. The first reason in this case, like we discussed before, is that the students are busy at night and they have other things to do and they won't be able to really attend the classes in the evening. And the second reason is that it is actually going to add more expense for the university. Now, I want to give you a tip here. If you are somebody who needs a 26 plus, you really need to show the ETS graders that you understand the information and have the capability to combine the information from reading and listening. Okay? In order to do that, you can use some additional sentences that I have provided here. You can say, he proposes that instead of this, X, the university should do this. So he proposes that instead of adding evening computer classes, the university should buy additional computers. Or you can say, the student thinks it's better to do this instead of this. Or you can say, on the other hand, university thinks that this will be a good idea, but the man thinks completely opposite. So just remember, if you need a 26, you need to combine those 2 sources of information. Summarization of man's opinion is not going to do it for you guys. You need to combine the reading and the listening. Now, let's talk about time breakdown. So time is a major problem for most of the students. They always say, I run out of the time, or they feel like they give a lot of information about the first reason and then they don't have enough time for the second reason. So it's really important that I give you a breakdown of time so that you know exactly how much time you need to spend on each part of the question. So here's that. When you are stating the university's change or the announcement, spend approximately 10 seconds. Now let me tell you, there's a caveat here. This question said, briefly summarize the proposal. So we have to kind of state what the proposal is about. And then we have to also tell the grader that why the university has decided to do that. So we have to kind of briefly give 2 reasons that the university gives in the reading passage. But usually this question, will start by saying, what is man's opinion about this? And state his opinion and explain the reasons he gives for holding that opinion. In that case, you can just say the university has decided to add computer classes in the evening. The man doesn't think it's a good idea, right? So you don't have to go into why the university has decided to make that change. But in this question, because it said briefly summarize the proposal, I want to briefly tell why university has decided to make that change. So just remember, there are 2 types of question numbers 2 here. One can say briefly summarize the proposal, and the other one where it just says what's man's opinion or women's opinion about the change and explain the reasons. And in that case, you will still start by saying what the change is about, but just don't deep dive into the 2 reasons that the university provides. Okay, so now in the time breakdown, I want you to spend almost 10 seconds on the university's change. After that, when you are stating students' opinion and you're transitioning before you begin your first reason, spend approximately 5 seconds there. So just think like this, that the university's change and the transitions and these three things should take approximately 15 seconds. Then you're going to give the first reason, where you're going to spend 20 to 25 seconds on the first reason. Then you're going to give second reason and spend 20 to 25 seconds. Now, I have given a range here because sometimes you will notice that they talk more about one reason than the other, and they're not really equally distributed. So if that happens, of course, if they talk a lot more about the first reason, you will end up taking the higher end of this range, which is 25 seconds. Okay. Now we're going to listen to my response and see what are some of the things I did in my response that you can do to get a 26. So let's hear my response now. Okay, so now let's listen to my response so that you can see what are some of the things I do and how do I use the template. So let me play that.
The university has decided to offer computer classes in the evening, and they have done that because the day classes are getting really overcrowded and there are not enough computers for everyone to use. They think that this is the most cost-effective method of solving this problem.
Okay, so what I did here was I actually used part of my template by saying the university has decided to. And then the reason I gave these two reasons of the university is because the question said briefly summarize the proposal. So I wanted to give more information.
The man doesn't think this is a good idea because he thinks that it will be really hard for students to take classes in the evening because students are really busy with jobs, families, and other social events. He also thinks that the university will actually have more expenses because there will be more teachers needed, and also the building will have to be open at night.
Okay, so now what I did, I actually said the man doesn't think this is a good idea. So you see how I didn't even use part of my template by saying they're discussing this change and any of that. I just was very natural sounding and I said the man doesn't think this is a good idea, right? So that's what I mean, that do not memorize the template, rather use the template to get really inspired to give natural sounding responses. Now, especially if you are someone who needs a 26 on the speaking section. Now, I want to actually focus and discuss two other things that I did. One, if you remember, I kind of focused on really hard for students to take classes. Then I said, he also thinks that the university will actually have more expenses. So why did I stress on these two words? So the reason I stressed on these two words is to basically pinpoint the differences between the man's opinion and the university's opinion. So really, by stressing on some words, we can convey our message in a better way. And that's what I did here. And that's kind of the intonation pattern. Right? So if you're someone who has not been able to get a 26 and have already taken the exam a few times, make sure that the intonation pattern is not a problem for you, right? We all know that English is not like a monotonous language going in a line. It's not like that. It's basically musical. It has its own rhythm. There are some words that are high pitch versus low pitch. There are some words that are longer than the others. And really, by stressing on these two words, I'm able to convey my message in a better way. So let's continue listening.
He thinks that instead of doing this, the university should consider...
Now here, what I did, I actually used my template. I said, he thinks that instead of doing this, right? Remember I was talked about that if you need a 26, combine the two sources of information. So that's the template that I used.
More computers, as the computer prices have really gone down in the last few years, and he thinks that it will be a better solution to solve the problem. Also, the computer room is big enough to have all these new computers, so he thinks it's a better idea to buy more computers than to have classes in the evening.
Okay, right? So now you understand how you can really use this template and still manage to sound natural. So now I'm going to give you a little bit more tips for this question number 2. And my first tip is something that we just talked about, that do not memorize the template, rather use this template to give natural sounding responses. And your job is to sound natural, especially if you want a 26. So these templates are really good to get inspired, or they're really good for someone who needs a very high score but necessarily, doesn't need a 26 for their professional license. So you can use these words as an inspiration and feel free to use these. But make sure you still sound natural. That's really the key here. The next part is that only give the summary of the announcement if asked to. Otherwise, just briefly say what the announcement is about, but don't elaborate on it. So we discussed this before as well, that if the question says briefly summarize the proposal, then of course tell them what the proposal is about and tell them why the university has decided to make that change, like I did in this question. But if the question doesn't say briefly summarize the proposal and just says what's the man's opinion or the women's opinion on it and what are the reasons they give, then just say that the university has decided to add computer classes in the evening. The man doesn't think this is a good idea. Right? So you don't have to necessarily go into the university's reasons in the beginning. But remember the last part, this part of combining the two sources of information, you still want to do that. Okay? So this tip number 2 really only applies to this introduction. You still have to do this part. You still have to do this third paragraph at the end. Now, next one is no need of a conclusion if you need a 26. Rather, use that time to integrate both reading passage and conversation. Yes, so if you are someone who needs this score, no need of wasting time at the end giving a conclusion, okay? I want you to follow the template that I gave you and how I responded to this question. No need of saying anything at the end. So these are the 2 reasons that the man gives for having that opinion. That's not going to give you any extra score, so forget about the conclusion, especially if you want a 26. Now, the last one talks about using transition words, such as however, on the other hand, as a result, therefore, in contrast. But remember, do not sound robotic or unnatural. So you can use these words when you are explaining the reasons, but just make sure sound very natural. And I will say one of my students, he uses the word furthermore a lot on his responses, but I'll tell you this, that he does not sound like he has memorized it. It just comes naturally to him. Okay, so we have covered a lot of information. Now we're going to talk about what will get you a 26 plus. Okay, so if you need a 26 plus, remember, this is a score that a native English speaker would get if they were to take TOEFL. So you are targeting a very high score, so don't feel bad if you have not been able to get that until now. There are 3 categories on which ETS is grading you. The first is topic development, second is delivery, and third is language use. Okay? 3 things: topic development, delivery, and language use. Now, there are a lot of things that go under, each of these categories. So today, for just the simplicity's sake, we're going to discuss one thing from each of these categories. So, topic development. What does topic development on question number 2 mean? The best way to remember it is 2 C's. 2 C's is the best way to remember it: completeness and correctness. On question number 2, you can do a really good topic development if you completely give the 2 reasons that the man or the woman gives for holding their opinion. So give those 2 reasons completely, okay? And that means that you have to give all those reasons and not just talk about the first reason in detail and not have enough time for the second reason. If you do that, then you're not going to be able to, satisfy this requirement because you missed parts of the second reason. And a lot of students have this problem. They spend too much time on the first reason and do not spend enough time on the second reason. So make sure that you give all the reasons in completeness that the man or the woman gives. Then the correctness. Of course, the reasons that you're giving, they need to be correct, right? You cannot comprehend wrong information and then expect that you're going to get a 26. So that's your topic development for question number 2. 2 C's. Make sure completely give your reasons and correctly give your reasons. Now we're going to talk about delivery. Delivery, there are a lot of things under delivery piece, and it's your intonation, your fluency, your pronunciation, all of that goes in here, delivery. And how do you convey your message? Do you use clear words, and do you do that in a coherent manner? Here we're going to talk about fluency, and I'm actually going to talk about a very common question that I get is like, can I have words such as the, and the stops, like again and again those stops. So those words are called filler words. Filler words are words such as the, you know, like, and a lot of people make that mistake. So that's a very common question I get. Can I have those filler words and still be able to get a 26? So my response to that is, you can have, let's say, one time or one or two time in a response, you can have a filler word, like just one or two times in your response. But if you have a lot of filler words, if you stop a lot, it's going to be really hard for the grader to understand you, and that's how, you know, you're going to score less on this delivery piece. Okay, so you cannot have a lot of filler words. You can't have those stops again and again. So if you're doing it a lot, I definitely recommend that you start working on those, because it will be really hard for the listener to understand what you're saying if you have a lot of those unnecessary stops, or if you're feeling like saying the again and again in your speech. So you want to make sure that you don't do that often. So doing it one time, twice in a response is okay, but I say nothing more than that. The third is language use, and that's where your grammar and your advanced vocabulary comes into play. So how many errors can you make with grammar? And the most common question I get is that, hey, in question number 4, am I using the past tense or am I using the present tense and all of that? The thing is, when you're going to give your TOEFL responses, you're going to be switching between 2 to 3 responses again and again. So you're going to be switching back and forth between 2 to 3 tenses. So when we're doing that, I can't really say, okay, on question number 4, it can be all in past tense. It just doesn't work like that. You need to have really advanced grammar, and also not just know all the grammatical rules, but also be comfortable in the spoken grammar, in the spoken English. So like, let's look back at my response. So here I said the university has decided to. So I use the past tense to basically start off my response, that they have already decided to do that. But then look at, just in the same sentence I said, because the day classes are getting really overcrowded and there are not enough computers for everyone to use. Then I talked about in the present tense that what's happening. This is happening. That's why university has already made that decision. So what happens is that you can't really say that, okay, I'm going to answer question number 2 or question number 4 in one tense and still be able to get a 26. No. The way we talk, we always switch back and forth between 2 to 3 tenses. So it's really important that you have advanced grammar and you're very comfortable with spoken grammar and spoken English. So that's the grammar piece. Okay, so remember, you have to do good topic development, which on question number 2 means giving all the reasons and correctly giving those reasons. Then you have to be fluent. And what fluency means is you cannot have filler words again and again. You cannot have unnecessary stops again and again. Make sure, if you are having a lot of those, make sure that you're very fluent and you reduce those filler words. It can happen once or twice in a response, but nothing more than that. Then the last one is grammar, which means that you are not really going to be able to use one tense in your response. You need to be comfortable with the grammar and spoken English in general. So I think there's one more point I wanted to cover, which was on the grammar piece. So before I forget, let me read my notes. Yes, I wanted to kind of answer this one question, which I missed. So a lot of students ask me how many grammatical errors are okay. So the thing with that is that if you're going to have, let's say your response is perfect, but if you just have one error, like you, instead of saying computers, like, in this response at the end, instead of saying, I think it's a better idea to buy more computer than to have classes in the evening, but everything else was okay, that's okay. That's okay. Everything else was amazing and you just had one error at the end, that's going to be fine. But if you have multiple grammatical errors in your response, again, it just makes understanding your response really difficult, and then also it can change the meaning of your message, and then you're not going to be able to get a 26. Okay, so I hope I answered a lot of your questions, but if you're interested to know more on what you need to do to get a 26 plus on the speaking section, or if you're interested in advanced note-taking strategy and other free TOEFL tips, visit my website, www.englishtestsolution.com. And thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.